Hello, I'm Fraser Simons, and today I'm going to be talking about the third book in the Simon Snow trilogy, Any Way the Wind Blows, which concludes the Baz Simon storyline by Rainbow Rowell. So, this book was a bit of a mixed bag for me. The payoff that I was hoping to get from the series never really got there, but there was a whole bunch of different stuff that I didn't expect that did surprisingly work for me, even though this book is pretty massive, actually, especially compared to the second book. I think it's around the same size as the first book. It's a chonker, but deceptively so, in that the text is pretty big and it jumps around so often. Like, there's a new chapter or a new paragraph break signaling a different narrator all the time. So it flew by pretty quickly, I think, for me. I think it took me about 3 evenings to get through, so not too bad at all for almost 600 pages, 575, something like that. This book picks off directly after the second book, where Shepherd goes with Penelope to the UK, and Simon and Baz go back to figure out their whole stuff as well. So everybody's back in the UK, the gang is kind of back together, the road trip is over, but it's still kind of got a messy narrative that did suit the road trip because it was just so thematically appropriate, where random stuff was happening and you just sort of rolled with it in a road trip kind of way. But it still feels kind of like that road trip is still going on in the UK, because it just keeps switching between all these different characters. Now we have Shepherd's perspective as well. We dive into Agatha some more. We dive into the 3 main characters still are more predominant, I would say. But as far as we know, for about a third of the book, I think, what seems to be the A-plot is Shepherd and his problem with being cursed, which gets more complex as we go along. Eventually, more Simon and Baz stuff happens, and we do get a plot, and then we get another B plot with Agatha and a new character who's introduced in the storyline as well. So there's just there's a lot going on, a lot to be wrapped up. There's a whole bunch of through lines from the first book that I didn't initially pick up on, actually. I was like, oh right, I kind of remember the goats, and I kind of remember this particular character from the first book, but not really. So there's this whole tying up of loose threads that you didn't really, maybe you cared about them, maybe you didn't, but they seem pretty random, basically. But I guess it's an interesting way to bring them back to Watford. The main plot thread revolves around there's a power vacuum after Simon had taken care of the mage, if that's what we want to call it. And so now there's these people that are wondering if there is an actual chosen one, and Simon wasn't the chosen one at all. So there's all these different people with different powers, and some are posers, some may be the real deal. And Baz and Simon go and take a look at this, basically, and this sort of snowballs into the A-plot. Shepherd's stuff is entirely separate and I guess somewhat satisfying. It works to have Penelope and Shepherd be doing something apart from Simon and Baz, but I don't know, it does feel kind of like why aren't we just following the Baz Simon storyline, basically? But I guess there isn't so much material there as she wanted, so she wanted to flesh out everything. It ended up feeling pretty discordant for me, though. I overall didn't actually like this installment, which is the first time that's happened. The first book I gave 4 stars. The second book I gave 4 stars, even though it was like objectively maybe not as engaging as the first book. But all the messiness, like I said, makes sense because it's like got all this new lore about American stuff going on, and it had the road trip. It had some good moments with Baz and Simon where we understood kind of what was going on with them out of the dynamics of the UK. But it becomes a little bit tiresome in this book because they basically just keep having the same argument slash fight multiple times, just over and over and over and over. It seems like they're just having the same discussion since the first book, maybe even. The main challenges that they're having, I guess, have been addressed somewhat in the narrative. At least they're specifically articulated. But then the stuff that you kind of may have been curious about but maybe don't care about are more engaged with in the text, with Simon in particular, than the Baz-Simon relationship, and I'm here for their relationship for the most part, so it was kind of like, okay, I guess we'll deal with this, and then finally maybe we'll see what sort of conclusion or even like a beginning they have at the end. And it all just kind of got muddled up, like I said, so I ended up giving it 2 stars out of 5. I think that's pretty much all I can say about it without going into spoiler territory. So here marks the spoilers. I felt like the A-plot kind of didn't really do it for me all that well. It was kind of interesting that chosen one guy had like a charlatan power that he was bringing out in people and then fizzling them out, and then sort of doing the same thing that the mage was trying to do basically, but in a different way, and people were following him in the same sort of madness of crowds type of way. But it again feels kind of like a repeat. The Goats of Watford plotline with Agatha, like, it was kind of interesting that she got some romance and she wasn't just like sad girling it the whole time, I guess, but it again didn't really feel like why I was there and reading the book, and it took up quite a bit of the plot line. Simon decided to get his wings taken off and then didn't, and it just felt like that was spinning in wheels. Like I said, they had the same fight over and over and over and over, and it kind of didn't really get resolved. Like, it somewhat did, but you can tell that they're still gonna be having some problems, which is fine. Like, I don't need a bow wrapped up conclusion or anything, but it also felt like, again, just spinning wheels, right? It's nice that we know where Simon comes from and he isn't an orphan, but I was perfectly fine knowing that he was an orphan and that was his backstory. It's perfectly fine, I think. It's somewhat interesting that that family member ran off with the mage and they had a kid, and we never actually found out what happened between them, as far as I remember, unless it's in the first book and I just can't remember. We also, with Shepard, he gets, cured of his sickness, but it didn't matter to the plot line whatsoever, except for Penelope and them get to, start a relationship, and them deciding to go to America felt like a pretty far out there decision to me. I don't know. And that B plot never intersected at all really with the A plot. They didn't have anything that they were doing in the A plot, and then they have that whole kerfluffle where Simon tries to intervene and protect them, and they get all mad and have to deal with it, and it feels like they've matured somewhat, sure, but again, it's just the same thing again, basically, except he's immune, which is kind of interesting, but we also never get to realize, you know, they never explain why his power of immunity didn't go away as everybody else's did, right? Why is he immune to it? What about the whole turning into a dragon thing? Could have been pretty cool, but nothing happened with that. I guess he decided to not take off his wings, but in the narrative, I don't think he ever actually decided that. He just kept kind of going along with the suggestion, but then obfuscated, and then is he doing it? Is he not doing it? Is he comfortable in his own skin? Is he not? And then the whole Excalibur thing just felt really stupid, basically, to me. So yeah, I just didn't feel like much of it worked. It felt like bad plot beats, bad pacing, a whole bunch of stuff just stuffed into it. It felt very much like an anime episode with a lot of filler to me, basically. And I just wanted some sort of closure, like I said, even if it was a beginning with Baz and Simon, but it just seems like they're, you know, I guess that's not particularly fair. They did work out some stuff, but not really. And where it does get interesting with the relationship, it sort of doesn't go anywhere again. Like, we understand what's going on in Simon's head and what's going on in Baz's head and why there's conflict there, but they don't get explored substantially whatsoever. And so we kind of don't ever see where it's going at all. It ends basically with Simon just understanding that he has family and that he is trying to not have a knee-jerk reaction with Baz, and he, I guess, is fine not exploring his sexuality, which is also fine, but then why bring it up in the first place, except if it's just to say that it's okay to not explore it whatsoever. Like, it just feels like a whole bunch of different pieces are inserted in the narrative for no real reason. But maybe I missed some stuff, I don't know. Anyway, I think I'll wrap up the video here. If you've read the book and if I'm missing certain things, then just comment and let me know. Tag it with spoilers if appropriate. I'd love to know what you thought of it. Maybe I was being too overly harsh or projecting some of my needs or wants onto the book that it wasn't trying to fulfill. Other people's perspectives are always welcome. And I'll see you in the comments. See you later.